Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the early morning cottage kitchen at the Elliott homestead. We're still starting our mornings fairly slowly this winter. We're still on our break from school, and so our mornings drag out with lots of coffee. This morning we thought it would be the perfect morning to put together a rustic farm breakfast. We're still very much in the season of celebrating everything that we've put up in our root cellar with all that work.
So this morning we're cooking our breakfast over our fire, which is not something we do every morning, but it's a simple way to elevate what can be a mundane meal. And of course, the first step to being able to cook over a fire is getting your fire going early so you can get a good bed of coals going.
This morning's breakfast, I'm pulling a lot from the root cellar. We have some semolina bread that was made a few days ago, some applesauce, some jarred peppers, some shallots, dried parsley, and of course, fresh eggs. For the past 3 years, I've encouraged women in their kitchen with new whole food recipes and instructional cooking videos. If you've been needing a little more pep in your step when it comes to cooking delicious food, I want to personally invite you right now to join the Elliott Homestead cooking community. Visit cook.theelliottHomestead.com to get started. As a cooking community member, you will get 5 farm fresh inspired recipes each month, created from my farm kitchen and delivered straight to you. I'll also send you an instructional video to go along with those recipes so that you can learn new skills and begin to enjoy new dishes and flavors. The cooking community is a place of inspiration and community where you can visit with other home cooks on our circle group or simply enjoy the bountiful recipes that you'll find each month in your mailbox or inbox. Visit cook.theelliottHomestead.com right now. Choose the membership package that's right for you, and let's get cooking.
You decided to highlight this morning's breakfast with cooking eggs over the fire.
Yes.
When you think about cooking food over the fire, eggs might not be the very first thing you think of.
No, but Alice Waters sort of developed this technique of cooking eggs in a spoon years ago, and I was immediately captivated by the idea. Plus, when you have a fire, you're able to warm things over the top of the stove. So even though we're going to be cooking our eggs in the actual coals of the fire, we're going to be warming up the rest of breakfast on top.
Something about cooking over a fire that gives your food that enchanted element.
That's a perfect word for it.
And once the fire's going and the food starts to sizzle a little bit, that's when the kids begin to come out of their bedrooms in the early dark hours.
Especially William. He seems to wake up to the smell of food more than any other child. When we first moved into this kitchen 7 years ago, we didn't have a stove in our kitchen. But this kitchen is very old and very cold in the winter. And I think we lived through 2 or 3 winters before we absolutely put our feet down and just said, we have to get a stove installed. So this is an old Yodel stove that we found on Craigslist. It's been so handy, not only for the ambiance of having a fire in a cold winter kitchen, but also for getting to cook over like we're gonna do this morning. So like Stuart mentioned earlier, there is something enchanting in and of itself about cooking over a fire. The same egg could be cooked on the stovetop or cooked in a really terrible way and taste completely different. But cooking it over a fire, you get the smoky element. You can taste the wood, you can taste the fried butter, and it's quite wonderful. We're going to be highlighting the egg we cook in the fire today with a homemade sort of tapenade, which is some roasted red peppers that we made in our garden this past year. I preserve these by packing them in oil, and I'm going to be adding in some dried herbs, some fresh cracked pepper, sea salt, and olive oil. Cooking in winter is certainly not bland, and it certainly doesn't have to be boring. But a home cook has to learn how to combine flavors and to combine preserves in different ways to still bring that punch of flavor. These shallots and roasted red peppers that we preserved from the summer garden are the perfect way to do that.
We were fortunate to find a special utensil to cook these eggs in. And if people are wanting to maybe try this at their own homes, this would be a great thing to be on the lookout for.
Yes.
What are you using here?
So this is a copper spoon. It's literally, and it's called an egg spoon. My friend Sarah makes them, and I'll put a link to her below the video. Sarah's I think she's actually the only female coppersmith that's in the United States. Based out of Wisconsin, does incredible copper work. So I got this spoon from her years ago, and this is literally the only thing I do with it, and it's still worth having.
So what's the technique to get a good fried egg over a fire with a copper egg spoon?
So you need coals, like Stuart mentioned earlier. You gotta have the coals because you gotta cook the egg fast and hot. So you can see I have the spoon basically nestled down into the coals. I've added butter, but you can certainly use an olive oil of sorts. Then you basically just need to crack the egg in there. It'll cook very fast. You want it to bubble up quickly. You don't turn it at all. It kind of cooks inward from the heat of the coals. But really the only trick is making sure you have coals and making sure your spoon is in those coals and your spoon is really hot before you add the egg.
Like with most things, the more you do something like this, the better you understand how to do it well. And we've definitely made some bad fried eggs over the fire. But you've got to be willing to learn from those mistakes. And the result after you get better at it is something very satisfying.
So last winter, when your dad was living with us for a while, he loved the fire, especially coming up from Georgia where you don't have snowy, cold winter mornings in the same way that you have here. And he would come inside and we'd build the fire. And I remember making him eggs over the fire like this for the first time and watching his face as he ate them. And it was such a pleasure for me to watch somebody enjoy that elevation, that magic that you touch on with cooking over a fire. So it's not the most practical. It's not the most clean. It's not the most efficient, but there is something for just slowing down and saying, you know what, I'm going to take an extra 15 minutes and just eat something extraordinary. There are these little opportunities and these little pockets that you can, we use the word elevate, that you can elevate to create beauty. And I think you can't take those all the time. We have lives to live. But the other piece of me says, let's do it because this is life. This is joy and this is wonderful. my Christmas present this year was a Serrano ham, which now proudly sits on our kitchen counter. And this is a wonderful addition to this breakfast.
Even though it was my present to you, I think I've eaten probably 90% more of it than you have.
You seem to really like it.
I catch myself often just hanging out at the counter and cutting off little bits for a little snack.
This is why the kitchen is never clean. The people keep coming. There's always food around. There's always smells. There's always Serrano ham to be nibbling on.
On a morning like this, we let the kids kind of trickle out. And it's fitting this morning that the boys are the first ones up, which means they are also one of the first ones that get to have some breakfast, because they're also the ones that have to go out with me in the morning and take care of all the morning chores.
I think that's one of the reasons that farm breakfasts are actually so important, because after breakfast, when the sun's finally up, it's chore time. And there's long, hard, cold chores ahead for everybody. So this seems like such a wonderful way to start them.
One of the fun things about this breakfast is you have to serve them in individual portions. You can't cook 6 eggs at a time. You've got to do 1 egg at a time. You toast 1 piece of bread at a time. So it's a special way, I think, to give attention and focus to each individual portion for each individual person.
Mm-hmm. So now that everyone is fed and nourished with our rustic, cooked over the fire farm breakfast, it is chore time. Even though there's still a long winter ahead, there's also a lot of little ways that we can make that enjoyable and a lot of really good food yet to be made.